£350,000. That's roughly what a paid-off family home in England is worth on average today. And it's exactly the kind of house a fraudster can try to steal from you without ever breaking in through a door or a window. You don't lose it because you did something wrong. You lose it because you did everything right. Paid off the mortgage, kept the paperwork in a drawer, and stopped checking. And stay with me until the fourth thing I show you, because it's the one almost nobody in this situation ever thinks to check. And it's the difference between catching this in a week or catching it in a year. I'm going to walk you through this properly, the way someone who's spent years untangling property disputes would explain it to their own parents. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The land registry doesn't ring you when someone tries to change the name on your house. It sends one letter to an address the fraudster may have already redirected. If you miss it, you might not find out until a buyer's solicitor calls, asking why you're still living in a house you supposedly sold. There are 5 things about this you need to understand, and one mistake at the end that catches out more families than the fraud itself. Let's go through them. And remember, stay for the fourth one, because that's the one that actually stops this before it starts. The first thing to understand is who this actually targets. And it isn't random. Once your mortgage is cleared, the lender's charge comes off the title. Your home becomes what the land registry calls unencumbered. And here's the part nobody tells you at the time. That also means nobody is watching it anymore. No bank, no solicitor, no automatic check, just you, and whatever attention you happen to give it. Retirees are targeted specifically because mortgage-free homes are common in that age group. Because decades of ownership mean the house has usually grown enormously in value. And because after 30 or 40 years in the same place, most people genuinely stop thinking of their home as something that needs protecting. The certificate goes in a drawer, life moves on. That gap in attention is worth hundreds of thousands of pounds to the right criminal. This next part affected thousands of property owners last year alone, and most of them had no idea it was even possible. Fraudsters don't need to meet you, follow you, or come near your house. They gather your name and address, sometimes from old paperwork, sometimes from public records, sometimes from something as simple as an obituary notice for a parent who's passed. Then they apply to HM Land Registry to change the registered owner using a forged signature or a shell company set up purely to receive the property. That's it. No lock picked, no window broken, just a form. But here's where I need to correct something a lot of scarier videos on this topic get wrong. Because fear keeps people watching, but it doesn't actually protect them. A forged signature does not legally transfer ownership in this country. If someone forges your name, the transfer can be challenged and, in the right circumstances, reversed entirely. There's even a compensation scheme, often called an indemnity, built specifically for situations where fraud or a mistake on the register causes someone a loss. So, no, a criminal filling in a form does not instantly and permanently hand them your house. But, and this is the part that actually matters to your life, you still have to prove it happened. You still have to fight the entry, gather evidence, possibly deal with a mortgage a stranger took out in your name, and possibly involve solicitors and police before it's undone. That process can take months. It can cost real money. And none of it is your fault. If you've skipped this one, it could already be too late to catch it early. So let's get into what actually stops it before it becomes a legal mess. The first real safeguard is completely free, and it's the single most useful thing on this entire list. It's called the Property Alert Service, run directly by HM Land Registry. You register your address, and if anyone ever applies to change anything on that title, a new mortgage, a change of ownership, anything at all, you get an email almost immediately. It doesn't stop someone attempting fraud. What it does is turn a problem you'd otherwise discover in 6 months into one you discover in 6 minutes. And I want to be blunt about something here. In America, And increasingly in adverts here in the UK too, companies charge a monthly subscription for what is essentially this exact same alert. Consumer protection groups on both sides of the Atlantic have said the same thing repeatedly. These paid services don't prevent fraud. They notify you after someone's already tried. That's the entire product. So before anyone sells you monitoring for £12 a month, ask yourself if you're paying for anything Land Registry doesn't already hand you for free. This next check surprises almost everyone, including people who think they're being careful. Go and dig out the paperwork from when you originally bought the house. In some purchases, particularly older properties or ones with a slightly complicated history, a title indemnity insurance policy was arranged at the time and quietly forgotten about. A phone call to the solicitor who handled your purchase, even decades later, can tell you whether that protection already exists and exactly what it would cover if a fraudulent claim ever landed on your doorstep. Most people have never once asked this question about their own home. And this next one, the one I told you to stay for, is the one almost nobody checks, and it's the one that actually catches identity-based property fraud before it reaches the title at all. Check your credit file, not because you have a mortgage, but because if someone is trying to borrow against your address using your name, it can show up in your credit history before it ever shows up anywhere else. If you're retired and not routinely applying for credit yourself, any unexpected activity stands out immediately: a search you didn't authorize, an account you didn't open. Doing this a couple of times a year through any of the free UK credit reference agencies takes minutes and can be the earliest possible warning you get. Let me tell you about Margaret and Derek, because their situation is the one this scam is actually built for. They'd owned their home outright for over 20 years, passed down from Derek's parents. No debts, no complications, exactly the kind of house that stops being watched once the mortgage is gone. It sat empty for stretches. While they spent time at their daughter's, the post built up, nobody thought twice about it. That combination, unencumbered, occasionally empty, and quietly unmonitored, is precisely the profile fraudsters look for. It's not about being careless. It's about being exactly the kind of homeowner who has every reason to feel safe, and none of the systems automatically watching to make sure they stay that way. Here's a check that costs a few pounds but tells you everything instantly. You can view your own property's title register directly through Land Registry for a small fee, and it shows you exactly who's listed as the owner and whether any loans or charges have been placed against the property. Doing this once or twice a year takes minutes and gives you the kind of certainty that no email alert alone can fully replace. And keep an eye on your post, because this is the part that trips up more families than the fraud itself. If bills that normally arrive, council tax, utilities, anything tied to the property, suddenly stop coming, don't assume it's a mix-up. A missing bill can sometimes mean mail associated with your address has been quietly redirected. A gap like that is worth checking immediately, not explaining away. If you ever do discover a fraudulent application has already been made, speed is genuinely everything. Contact HM Land Registry straight away to flag the entry and start the dispute process. Report it to Action Fraud, the UK's National Reporting Centre for Fraud and Cybercrime. And speak to a solicitor who specifically handles property disputes, because they'll know the exact legal steps to correct the register and protect your position. Caught early, this might be a phone call and a form. Caught late, after a fraudulent loan has already been drawn against the property, it becomes months of legal wrangling to undo. So, here's where this leaves you. Property fraud against mortgage-free homes is real, it's growing, and it specifically targets people who've spent decades doing everything right. But the actual protection against it isn't expensive and it isn't complicated. Register for the free property alert service on your own home and on any property belonging to elderly relatives, inherited houses, or anywhere that sits empty for periods of time. Check whether an old indemnity policy already exists from your original purchase. Check your credit file a couple of times a year, even without a mortgage. Glance at your title register once in a while. And never let a missing bill go unexplained. If you know someone who paid off their mortgage years ago and hasn't thought about any of this since, send them this today. It could be the 5 minutes that protects a house they spent a lifetime paying for. And if you want to know the moment something changes on your own property before anyone else does, that's what subscribing here gets you. The next rule change or the next warning sign before it becomes a problem instead of after. Because the families this catches out aren't careless. They're just the ones who never got told where to look. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.